Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ChiroBusinessMojo. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle player, or MP3 player. Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day. Mr. Bryan Beaver was owner, president, and chief executive officer of Carter Energy Corporation, a fuel transport business, from 2000 to 2012. And he was also the 2012 recipient of the Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Association of Kansas Distinguished Service Award. Under Bryan's leadership, Carter Energy expanded beyond the Midwest and into multiple states across the country. Welcome, Bryan Beaver.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Well, thanks for joining us today. I know I've taken your life story and career and compressed it into about 3 sentences, but feel free to fill in any gaps and give us any highlights that I missed.
Well, I think that our company today would be in its 56th year, and just in the background there, I succeeded the founder of the company, Sam Carter, who started the company as Sam Carter Oil Inc. in 1960, when the company went into the actual marketing of motor fuels and distribution in the early 80s. Changed the name of the company to Carter Petroleum, and I ultimately re-imaged and named the company Carter Energy Corporation back in 2001, and moved our headquarters to Overland Park, Kansas. Probably one of the significant things about my time at Carter, when I joined the company in 1983, we had annual revenues of $6 million, and in 2012, when I sold the company to a Fortune 100, we were at $1.8 billion. So
wow.
We not only ran a high quality company, we did it with substantial growth.
Now, when you first started with Carter, what were you were an employee, right?
I started as the company's first sales representative in 1983. And from there, I was promoted to sales manager. We had 4 or 5 salespeople, ultimately to vice president of sales and marketing. And then in 1997, I became president of the company. And then when Sam retired in 1999, I became also CEO. And in 2009, Terry Oliver became president and general manager of the company, and I served as chairman and CEO from that point forward.
That's impressive. Not everyone who starts with a company winds up owning the company and being the CEO, obviously. What were some of the pivotal turning points along the way? How did that come about?
Well, I think I stood out amongst all of the other associates in the company. It was a company that was manned by a terrific staff. We always sought to hire very competent people for every role. I was just a person who was highly motivated. I showed up early. I stayed late. I was never focused on just my role. I was always focused on the success of the enterprise, and it that always stood out to Sam. And so ultimately, he utilized my talent and motivation as an exit strategy for himself to then be able to retire one day.
So it sounds like part of the relationship with Sam was a mentor. Did he serve that role for you?
Yes. He mentored me in a lot of areas, taught me a lot of tremendous virtues in life, which I've always been grateful for. And I tell him how grateful I was for him sharing those virtues. And he reminds me that it only mattered because I was interested in learning them. So.
What's the greatest lesson you think Sam shared with you?
Oh gosh, what's the greatest one? There's so many. There's so many. I would say that probably a couple of the top ones that one's a little more broad about life, and that is learning to honor difference. I think was a tremendous virtue. He taught me the value of surrounding myself with people that had strengths I didn't have, which makes a little more sense to people in business, but honoring difference is a critical one. He taught me that the golden rule works in business too, and just many, many good virtues. He was a very virtuous man.
So besides Sam, did you have other mentors along the way?
I did. My father-in-law was a very successful attorney who had his own law practice in the same city. And he was never not really my legal counsel, but was just always a great mentor. And then I ultimately sought out and engaged more of kind of a personal coach, a man that was 30 years my senior that I sought advice from and worked with for 25 years. That was also a Kansas Cityan.
So, looking back through your career, do you have an overriding philosophy or attitude about achieving goals?
I do, and it was in a posted in a frame hanging behind my desk in my office for many years. It was a quote. It said, "Minds are just like parachutes. They only function when they are open."
That's a good one. I can tell you what you said earlier. That goes right alongside with learning to value people with differing opinions and approaches. I know as a business owner, Haley and I wish that we had a staff of people who all thought exactly like we do at times. But it sounds like you're absolutely right. Keeping an open mind can certainly help and benefit the business in the long run.
There's no strength in having a group of people that all think alike. The strength is in the diversity.
Well, let's shift and talk a little bit about you personally. Do you have any daily habits, rituals, or routines that you did every day? You mentioned showing up early and staying late. Is there anything else that you did routinely, and a discipline maybe, that helped you get where you are?
Well, I think one of them was I always I had to work hard to be a good listener. I didn't know how to be a good listener when I first got involved in business, and listening skills are crucial. So I worked hard to model good listening habits, good eye contact with people. Often mirrored people. If I was in a one-on-one session, I used to mirror people. All you had to do is just kind of sit like they said. It makes people more comfortable. And I had one great habit I learned from Sam. When someone came into my office to meet with me, I always got up and came around the front of my desk and sat in my desk chairs with them. Didn't sit behind my desk and talk to people. And small habits like that just really allow you to have rapport with people.
Yeah, that's key, especially in our business. So much of it's such a personal business. It's a hands-on business. And oftentimes, both Haley and I, in practice, that's exactly what we'll do. We don't like that barrier, especially doctor-patient. We come around from behind the desk and sit one-on-one and talk with them about their health or whatever it is that's giving them trouble. But I agree, it really gets people to open up. And for us, we are relationship-based, and it's been very instrumental in our success, I believe. And it sounds definitely like yours as well.
Sure.
Well, in your experience, what separates those who really achieve success from those who don't reach their full potential?
I think probably people that work on personal growth. I was one person in an organization of 160 people. And I always wanted to be able to do, regardless of the role that I was playing at the time, I always wanted to be able to do it at optimum. And so to be able to do that, I had to grow. And, when I think about personal growth, I think a lot about the founder of McDonald's, guy who started the restaurant chain McDonald's. One of his famous quotes is, and always will be, when you're green, you grow, and when you're right, you rot. And so, you kind of stick with that theme of an open mind, and every day you learn. And so I sought out a lot of continual education, and I always sought the advice of people who had either been there before me or just people who were very wise. And that was just always a regular process. Went to a lot of seminars. There was a trade convention for our industry in town. We signed up and took all the classes that were offered. Just you can't ever stop growing and learning. And so I think personally, really just one attribute of being successful is just being willing to personally grow every day of your life.
Well, I want to shift and talk about maybe a failure or obstacle or challenge you had, and describe the events that led up to it and what you did to move through it, and maybe some lessons you learned along the way.
Well, oh gosh, there's a lot of those. There's not one that comes to mind. I think the hardest job I ever had to learn at Carter Energy was learning to be CEO. And I think when Sam retired and I assumed the role, that was the execution of a 10-year plan, and I didn't recognize how difficult it was going to be CEO of that thriving and growing company. Because the day he retired, he went home. I mean, I bought the company, I assumed the role of chief executive officer, and he left. And that was the most difficult. And so there were a lot of failures along the way, because when you're in the lead role and you take that organic organization, every time I made a mistake, it was exaggerated times the staff, 150, 160 people. And so those are as I reflect back over my career, those would be the most memorable mistakes. Just you made an error. It could be as simple as just behaving poorly in a meeting, responding poorly to someone, because monkey see, monkey do. That's how it works. So I spent a lot of time in my learning to be CEO, understanding how to discipline the organization and how to do it, starting by setting an example.
Well, let me ask you this. This podcast is all about providing actionable steps for our listeners, and our listeners are chiropractors who are also entrepreneurs. What single piece of advice or series of steps do you think what would you tell someone that they can apply tomorrow to their business?
Well, let me just run down. Let me I made a short list. Let me run down my list and just give you a few of those. A few things for them to think about. Okay? I think if you're going to own your own business, if you're going to be self-employed and be an entrepreneur, I think you have to think about leadership and leadership skills. I don't believe leaders are born leaders, because I don't believe I was a born leader, but I believe that I learned the skills of leadership. And so learning leadership skills is a lifelong journey, and one can never learn too many. And there are many great resources for business owners to learn leadership skills. For instance, I was in a Vistage CEO group, and you have the YPO is a great international organization, and you have Vistage is a great international organization. And if I were going to be self-employed today, to continue to hone my leadership skills, I would be in one of those groups, and that would be part of my life of being an entrepreneur is working on that leadership. To truly build a good organization and be a great leader, you have to know and admit your limitations. Everybody has limitations, and leaders are not people that just are broad-shouldered and big-chested and bear into the room and just tear the house down. They're people who understand that aligning resources to get a job done. And if a leader does not know and admit his own or her own limitations, then they'll never be comfortable surrounding themselves with people that can truly help them do a great job. There's managing the three resources that any one business owner has. All you truly have is time, energy, and money. You cannot replace time, and you cannot replace energy. You can always replace money. People think that money is the most important. It is the least important. It is our time and our energy and how we use it, because you cannot replenish them. So they have to be used really, really well. In my organization, everybody that was in leadership, management, and sales had to have graduated from the highest Franklin Covey time management course, and we sent them to that training, and they utilized those systems, because time is of essence. There's a sense of urgency in any business when you're serving customers, and you have to use time well. One of the things that we did, and this is more philosophical, is we ran a collaborative and consensus-based organization. And so when we were either making plans for the future or problem solving, it was always done in a collaborative manner. And we built consensus on how to go forward. And one of the reasons that is so important is because people come to work every day and they have their own creative insights, juices flowing through their body, and they want to utilize it. So when they work for someone that allows them to collaborate and create a brighter future, it's way more, it's more fun and fulfilling to work in an organization where you are allowed to bring your creativity to work. Okay, and so we did a lot of that in our company. We were a company that shared success. The success of our company, I was one of 160 people. The success was not about me. Certainly my leadership had a tremendous impact on the success, but the true success of getting where we were, the size of an organization we were an extremely profitable company. We grew our profitability and our cash flows with our sales. We didn't forsake profitability and cash generation just to say, well, we grew our sales 12% last year. A lot of people, it's really easy to grow a business, grow the top line. If you can't grow the bottom line, you're really not doing your job.
Well, I love everything you're saying, from time management to making your team feel involved and giving them a larger role and a larger say. That's all great stuff, and I've seen pieces of it here and there in our business as well, so I know all of this can apply to other chiropractors who may be listening. We are unfortunately running out of time. We are heading into the home stretch here. When you think of the word success, who or what do you think of and why?
I guess I would say I probably think of for me, the highest power on earth. I think of role modeling, and I think of God, because God put greatness in every human being, and so every human being has greatness within them, and it's important for us to role model other people's traits and their great traits, and to focus on people's great traits, because you can get a lot of things in life done focusing on people's strengths, and you can get very little done focusing on people's weaknesses.
So, final thoughts. What's the worst business advice you've ever received?
I don't remember that because I didn't apply it.
Well, what's the best business advice you've ever received?
find really good, really caring, and really smart advisors and listen to them.
Do you have a favorite book you recommend? I know there's a lot out there.
Well, my favorite book of all time, which was always the basis of my teaching, was M. Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled, because I think that choosing to be a dynamic leader and a great leader is relative to going down a path many people don't have the guts to go down. So that will always be my favorite book. I think a great simple business book that everybody should understand and read is the book titled Who Moved My Cheese? And the reason is, regardless of the type of business you're running or the scope or size of business you're running, one thing is for sure: the world is changing around you and without you. So learning to manage change is critical, and that book is the most fundamental book in getting every entrepreneur comfortable managing change.
Well, those are two great recommendations there. We're going to provide links to those in the show notes. Mr. Bryan Beaver, thank you so much for being our guest today and sharing your insights and wisdom with our listeners.
You're welcome. Glad to be with you.
Thank you for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Go to chirobusinessmojo.com for show notes on today's episode and jump on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review if you enjoyed the show.